What's up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another Picks Against the Spread breakdown, where I pick one game every single week to talk about in depth, different matchups, schematically and personnel-wise and coaching-wise, and why I'm betting on the game the way that I am. And this week, of course, this episode's coming out a little bit later than I wanted it to, but it's okay because the game I'm talking about is the late game this week between the Patriots and the Jets. And the reason why I chose this one to talk about mostly is because of the wild card that is Sam Darnold. You know, he throws a very big wrench into what we all thought this game would be a couple weeks ago, mainly because the Jets are a completely different team with Darnold than without. You know, we saw what they did to the Cowboys last week, and it's safe to say that not only is Darnold the most valuable player on the Jets, I mean, they're a completely inept football team without him. I would argue he's one of the most valuable young pieces in the league simply because of how bad the Jets were without him. Like, they literally stand no chance if he's not on the field. So clearly he's a difference-making quarterback. He's not all the way there in terms of development. You know, we saw him throw a couple pretty boneheaded passes against Dallas, but it's hard to find another young quarterback like him that has the mobility, the decision-making, the arm strength, the touch, the ball placement. I mean, he really is a fantastic young quarterback for them, and I truly do think they found their quarterback of the future. And I'm not going to say that the Jets have a great chance to win the game, but the reason why I'm betting on them to cover the spread, which right now is at plus 10 for them, it was at 9.5 yesterday, and it's gone up since then, probably just because of the injury reports that have come out since then. But the reason why I have them covering the spread is solely because Sam Darnold is kind of carrying the team, to be honest. In terms of schematic matchups, the big thing to watch here is the Jets offense versus the Patriots defense, which obviously has been phenomenal so far this year. But they are not without their weaknesses. It's not necessarily a personnel weakness, it's more schematic weakness. They play a lot of man coverage, and Adam Gase has a lot of man beaters built into his offense, man beaters that I think Darnold can take advantage of. You know, when you play so much man coverage like they do, because they have not just a trio, but a foursome of great corners. When you play that much man coverage, you're a little bit more susceptible to, like, you know, drag routes over the middle that typically break man coverage, because if you're just running a drag, naturally the corner is going to be trailing behind you, which then opens up yards after catch opportunities. They have a lot of rub concepts built in. You know, like we saw Adam Gase's offense last year when they were playing against Chicago, which probably just as good of a defense last year in Chicago as New England has this year. And they beat them with a lot of man-breaking concepts, a lot of short underneath routes, beat them with yards after catch. Like, you know, Adam Gase has schemed himself, and that was with Brock Osweiler, by the way, who's nowhere near as good of a quarterback as Sam Darnold. You know, we've seen Adam Gase scheme himself into a win against a great defense before with much worse personnel. So, you know, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we see the Jets move the ball a little bit on New England, especially just because they have a great quarterback. They have some pretty intriguing weapons, especially with Robbie Anderson. Jamison Crowder, I think, is a good slot receiver. You know, Le'Veon Bell in space is one of the best running backs in the league, one of the best running backs of the last decade even, as a runner and receiver. So, like, they've got some weapons. And schematically, I think they have some concepts that can take advantage of what New England does well. What is intriguing to me from a schematic matchup is the formations that the Jets use. Because if they go into a lot of stacks and bunches to try to back these corners off and keep them from playing press, those man beaters might not work as well, because then you open up, you pretty much make it automatic for New England to play a lot more like switch coverages, box technique, where they're going to have the leverage advantage on you. And in order to beat that, you know, that's when it becomes like longer developing route concepts in order to get the matchups you want and the leverages you want. And I don't necessarily think that they have the offensive line to hold up long enough to not get the ball out quick. So I don't recommend them playing a whole lot of stacks and bunches just because of how New England plays man. Like that's not ideal for them. I really want to see them spread it out, keep the receivers spread out, and then run rubs off of that. You can run some double moves off of that, like maybe kind of lull them into a sense of lull them into sleep with like some hitches and slants and all that kind of stuff, and then you hit them with the double move. But I don't want to see them condense the formation because that's really where New England kind of eats people alive. Like they're way too disciplined in coverage to get beat by the typical man beater combos that you see out of those formations. So I'm sure Adam Gase knows that. He's watched a lot of tape on this team. He knows what New England's good at. I'm just kind of throwing my thoughts on how I would attack them if I was him. And especially with all the offensive line injuries they have, I think like 4 out of their 5 starters are either missing the game or are playing hurt. You really don't want Sam to hold the ball for very long. So again, getting the ball out quick is of utmost importance. I don't know if they'll be able to run the ball very well because this Patriots front seven's pretty good against the run too. And with a banged up offensive line, it's going to be hard anyway. But you got to at least try to run the ball. You know, you can't be like Chicago where you run it 7 times in an entire game and 2 or 3 of those carries come from wide receivers. Like, that's unacceptable. You have to at least try, especially when you have Le'Veon Bell. If you are going to try, though, running like, power right at them probably won't work. Running ISO I don't even know if they have a fullback on the roster, but even if they use like an H-back and try to run ISO, that probably won't work. You really got to kind of scheme and create angles with like pin and pulls and counters, all that kind of stuff, trap runs. You got to get really tricky to run the ball with this offensive line against that Patriots front. So again, if the Jets have a chance to move the ball, it's going to be solely on scheme and not talent, because in terms of pure talent, they're nowhere near the Patriots defense. Like it's very lopsided. But with scheme, since we know what the Patriots' comfort zone is, I'll call it a comfort zone, we know what they like to do. If you can design a game plan around that and then also have some counter punches ready when they adjust to it, let's say they start playing more zone if you're running man beaters. If you have like side adjust built into the routes where if you read zone, you can kind of sit it down and have Sam read it as the receiver reads it. That can work too. I mean, we know Adam Gase has a background with the Earhart-Perkins offense, which that's what they're known for. The Patriots run the exact same kind of stuff where routes change based on the coverages presented. If you can kind of get rolling with that where a man beater can become a zone beater in the middle of a play, again, you have the opportunity to move the ball. This Patriots defense is not unbeatable. They just have supremely gifted talent pretty much everywhere in that secondary. So it's very hard to throw the ball. And that's also why their pass rush is good, because they force quarterbacks to hold onto the ball so their pass rushers can get home a little bit easier. They don't have like a superstar pass rusher in that front, but they're very good at rushing together as a team. If you watch my Vikings episode this week in terms of like layering pass rushes, taking away escape angles, they're very, very good at that. So they get a lot of sacks that I guess could be qualified as coverage sacks because their secondary is so good. So again, it's all about scheme. It's about how Gase sequences his play calls. It's about how he designs his route concepts. It's about the formations he used. There are yards to be had here. They just have to get the play calling right. I have a lot of faith in Sam Darnold to execute the offense. I have no worries about Sam as a quarterback. It really all comes down to Adam Gase. In terms of the other side of the ball, with the Patriots offense against the Jets defense, I would say the concerns about the Pats offense are not unfounded. Most of the problems to me are injury related, with a banged up offensive line. For once, I just want to see Isaiah Wynn be healthy because he was phenomenal at Georgia. I loved him coming out of Georgia, but he just has not been able to stay healthy so far in his career. I think if he could stay healthy, he'd be a great young left tackle, very reminiscent of like Teron Armstead down in New Orleans, but he can't stay on the field. And obviously, they've had a lot of injuries at tight end as well. I think it was a week or two ago, like they couldn't even run 12 personnel because they didn't have enough tight ends. So injuries have been a factor. I'm not even talking about the receiving core yet either. Josh Gordon's out. Philip Dorsett is playing hurt. It's like you might be looking at a receiving core this week of like an injured Philip Dorsett, a still banged up Julian Edelman, and like Jacoby Myers as your top 3. And I love Jacoby Myers. Like he had a really good offseason. And I think the thing that coaches love the most about him is he's very smart. He's always kind of in the right place at the right time, especially when they're running all of those routes that have side adjust built in, like that I talked about earlier. With the Jets, if you're running a man beater that can turn into a zone beater, he's very good at reading coverages and being in the right spot for Tom, which is huge for them. But at the same time, he's a very young, very inexperienced wide receiver, and the Patriots don't typically like to lean on young, inexperienced receivers because this offense is very hard to execute at that position, and they do tend to make mistakes. So far, Myers hasn't really made a lot of mistakes, but it's possible that we're just waiting for the first one. And unfortunately, in this offense, when a receiver makes a mistake, a lot of the time it ends up in an interception. So I don't want to predict that Tom's going to throw a couple picks, but if you're throwing to an inexperienced receiver, the chance, at least in this system, of it resulting in an interception goes way up. I mean, way up, just because of how complex this offense is. So, he's working with tight ends that haven't been on the team for very long. He's working with his only healthy starting receiver, who hasn't been on the team for very long. His main target, Julian Edelman's playing hurt. Philip Dorsett, I didn't even think he was going to play, but apparently he is. It's the passing game might be a little bit tough. Like, it could just be Tom Brady and James White versus the world this week, which, I mean, to be fair, they get a pretty good matchup of James White if they can get him on CJ Mosley. But I think if they get him on Blake Cashman, I think they specifically drafted him to cover James White because he's a very athletic, very quick, very fluid linebacker in space. In terms of physical profile, like, he's the exact kind of guy you want on James White. So if they can kind of work James into getting a matchup on CJ, who's nowhere near as good in coverage, that can probably be a benefit to them. But again, it all comes down to coaching. It comes down to formations and personnel matchups in terms of how Greg Williams schemes himself to get into the right personnel matchups, how McDaniels schemes himself to try to take advantage of where Greg is lining up. Like, this game is purely coach on coach because both teams are very injured and the personnel is nowhere close to what it was even a month ago for either team. So, I'm very intrigued by this game solely because I think the sidelines are going to have a major impact on it. But yeah, in terms of the Patriots offense, I think they're going to be effective. I think they are going to put up enough points to win the game. I just don't know if they're going to win by 10 or more than 10 even, as the line suggests. Like, that's a tough task, against a defense that's getting CJ Mosley back. So their run defense should be much better. They have Quinnen Williams back already, who's getting healthier from that ankle injury. I still think Leonard Williams is a good player. Maybe hasn't lived quite up to his draft stock, but he and Quinnen together inside, I think is going to be a pretty good duo in the long term for them. The secondary, obviously the safeties are the bright spot. The corners are not, but I think Jamal Adams is one of the 3 best young safeties in the league. Marcus May, when he's on the field and healthy, I think he's a good free safety. Like, there are defensive pieces here, and I think there's enough good defensive pieces here that they can give New England some problems on that side of the ball. Again, it just comes down to how McDaniels can get the matchups he wants against Greg Williams, how Greg Williams can heat up Tom Brady and get some pressure on him with all these crazy blitzes he likes to throw. This is going to be a mental game more than anything. From the coaches, from the quarterbacks, like, this game will be won between the ears by far more than it will be won by feet or arms or anything like that. Like, it's going to be a very intriguing football game. So I'm excited by it. Again, I've got the Jets covering but not winning because 10 is a little bit much of a spread for me. I don't know if either team would be able to win this game by 10. And I also have them hitting the under. I don't see them going over. I think it's 43.5. You would need this game to be like 24-20 to hit the over, and I don't think either team's going to be able to score that much, mostly because the Patriots defense is phenomenal and the Patriots offense is very injured. So again, I don't see them hitting the over. But I do think the Patriots win. I think the Jets cover, and then the score probably ends up somewhere around like 21-20. Actually, maybe not even that close. Maybe like 21-17. That sounds about right. So again, a win, but a much narrower win, more narrow win than the spread suggests. So again, yeah, that's how I see this game going. If you want to bet on this game or any of the other games that we got coming up in week 8, because we have some doozies on the schedule, you can still take advantage of our season-long offer from our sponsor, MyBookie, where you get a 100% deposit bonus on any deposit up to $1,000. Doesn't matter how much money you put in there. It could be $5, $10, $25, $400. Again, whatever you want, you get a 100% deposit bonus, which essentially doubles your bankroll. So if you win with those bets, you get double the winnings you would have got. Or if you lose, you can just use that deposit bonus for whatever your initial deposit is on your first bet. And then if you lose, it's fine because it's just house money. So it benefits you in multiple ways. And then, as you keep betting, you can then withdraw the money and it's just money. So it's a great deal. I've been playing on MyBookie for 3 seasons now. I think it's 3 seasons now, and I've lost a little bit, but I've won a little bit. I think it's all evened out in the end. The roller coaster that is the Houston Texans has been both very gracious and very terrible for me throughout the years. I still don't know why I root for this team because they break my heart every year, but hey, that's part of being a football fan, he said begrudgingly. But yeah, I'm not going to get over that Colts loss for a while. That was horse shit. Anyway, again, if you guys want to bet on these games, MyBookie, promo code Brett, get that deposit bonus, go have some fun. I'll be back later this week with another Film Room episode and then another picks against the spread breakdown for whatever game I choose for week 8. Not sure which one it's going to be. Might be the Chargers-Bears game because I'm going to that one in Chicago. Again, if you're going to be there, hit me up, DM me on Twitter, leave a comment here, whatever. I'm looking for a place to tailgate before the game. And anything that has beer and brats, I'm down for. So again, let me know if you're going, and I'll see you guys in a few days. Later.